It's funny how there's a constant pressure on time. Now, how this happened is because we perceive light as self-awareness or self-awareness as light. That's why our vision is the predominant of our senses. To perceive our reality as the electromagnetic spectrum. What we do not realize is that self-consciousness is a construct. It is something that is being constructed. And to construct something, you need tools. You need know-how and you need tools. Now, where is the know-how and the tools? What is supplying the, the, the know-how for constructing something as elusive to define as self-awareness? What is it that goes into the construction? What is it that makes this possible? But where's the technical know-how coming from? That is what it's my principles of organized complexity. That is what they seek to probe. Because if the light is a construct, then it means that where it really comes from is the blackness, the darkness, the blackness, whatever you want to call it. Because it contains the organizing principle. It is the organizing principle. It is in the darkness and the blackness that the entire visible part of the universe is orchestrated. It is put together. It is built. The know-how is coming from there. And that's because the source of all that technical know-how is from the sixes as the foundation of organized complexity. That's why it's the blackness. And so in this realization, where you have people constantly pushing towards the light, always want to be in the light, think about it. People are, what's the lifespan of an average human being? After that, they're gone. And before that, they're not even here. So it is safe to say that self-awareness is like a ripple or an impulse in the darkness and the blackness. For most of the time, it is not here. And even when it is here, how long do we spend sleeping where that self-consciousness dissolves? So even in the self-awareness and the light, where we have to immerse ourselves in the darkness periodically, otherwise otherwise self-awareness becomes impossible to maintain. First you go crazy and then you die. You can't sleep. That's really what it is. So it's not about just focusing on the light, focusing on the light. If you immerse yourself 100% in the light, you just human existence will end. I mean, the realization that we have today is coming from those who discarded the idea of the blackness. It was necessary for them. They removed the idea of the blackness. They removed it. So everything needs to focus on the light. And this was done for very flimsy reasons, like, trying to push an agenda which, reveals an extremely deep level of ignorance. Because by doing so, the sum total of that is that human existence is perceived as, or awareness is perceived as strictly the time that you have in the light. Outside of that, there is no existence whatsoever. And so a lot of pressure is generated on the time in the light. And that's what motivates everyday reality. People wake up and build empires and build buildings and they act like there's gonna be no tomorrow. In order to make this possible, human awareness needed to be damned. The experiential awareness of consciousness, it needed to be damned, to be truncated, so that the whole of blackness is not visible. Because if you can see the whole of blackness and how the light emerges from it, then you realize that we are not actors on a stage reading a script, which is what it would seem like if we just emerged into the light from nothing, played our roles and disappeared, which is what it looks like, especially for someone like me who studies astrology. But what it really is that the entirety of the structure, which involves the blackness, involves the darkness, which is the major composition of existence itself, implies that there are no choices. There is nobody that is choosing. There's nobody that's acting a script. In fact, there's nothing but a blip. And the blip is just another behavior of the blackness. What it does occasionally when it needs to focus on something. Maybe a question. Something arose in the blackness. A kind of question. And if you understood the nature of the blackness, you would realize that such things can't exist in the blackness. It is perfect. Its mechanisms, its processes, the only thing they give is perfection. So as soon as a question arises, for whatever reason, a question would exist, then it sets into motion the process of the process of resolving that question back into the perfection that it is. That process of resolving that back into perfection, that is the nature of the physical, observable universe. It is what is exemplified in mankind. That's why nature kept building ever more sophisticated central nervous systems, to the point where you can build a central nervous system that is sophisticated enough to become self-aware. Because it is only when the process is self-aware that the question can now be tackled. And the question is really very simple. Can you perceive the nature of perfection? Do you understand what it is? Who it is? That is the whole point. Because it doesn't matter what anybody thinks, whether you believe what I'm saying or not, I don't care. The fact is, human beings spend an inordinate amount of time sleeping. Not just human beings. Most creatures fall asleep. The ones who need the sleep the most are the ones who are more self-aware. That's because the machinery that produces self-consciousness needs to take a break. Now, why would it want to do that if self-consciousness was actually a thing, per se? It is a lens, just like a lens, a convex lens can focus the rays of the sun towards an intense spot. If you put this on a material for long enough, it will burn. The machinery of the brain focuses consciousness into self-awareness. In that state of self-awareness which we all experience, it is an extremely challenging task to think of a kind of consciousness that is not self-aware, and yet it's human existence. It's extreme because, I mean, seriously, what would you be if you couldn't pull yourself together as an I? What would you be? And in one of my earlier podcasts, The Astrology of Self-Consciousness, I really explained how fortunate we are to be able to pull ourselves, that we evolved under in this kind of solar system with the sun and the moon, which enabled which facilitated the emergence of a unitary type of self-awareness. That's really what it is. Because we're already hitting at the truth. Unlike the type of consciousnesses that would evolve under dual suns or three suns or whatever. It's really what it is. So it got me thinking that you spend so much time trying to be an ego, trying to actualize, trying to focus, trying to, you know, when the majority of our awareness does not include this kind of ability. You know, we could also explain for the reason why human beings are very bad at self-consciousness. Because this whole idea of choosing, I mean, when you talk about life and the mistakes being made in life and the entire general misery of life in terms of choosing and making mistakes, learning, and yeah, we have very important moments all built around love that make the experience on this rock worthwhile. It gives it meaning that could not be achieved in any other way, because everything else is just ridiculously futile. Because it doesn't, the very idea that people need to leave this rock and disappear forever, it makes the acquisition of anything stupid. It makes the gratification of the ego completely stupid, because what are you gratifying? It's like a breath. It's here today and not gone the very next day. What is it that it needs to be gratified, to be honest? And yet it is necessary for self-awareness, for the illusion of choice which we must engage in every day. I have always found that very dubious, because which people actually choose? Do you choose the circumstances you are born into? You don't. So what exactly is your choice? In a world where the past largely determines the future, not just in human relations, but in in the physical universe itself. I mean, you get a lot of motivational speakers who talk about disconnecting the past and moving forward. If you could really do that, you'd be schizophrenic. Truth is that nobody can. The past is the foundation upon which you stand to construct your future. And every day with the rules being played on earth, the consequences of that past are being ingrained deeper and deeper. So they become more restrictive. It doesn't matter what anybody thinks. It doesn't, people can say all sorts of things that they want. It really doesn't make any difference. Those whose consciousness or self-awareness has been able to embrace the darker parts, they've been able to grapple with their ignorance, which is what the darkness really symbolizes in the presence of self-awareness, because you can't penetrate it. That's why everyone's afraid of death, because you can't penetrate it. You don't know how to extract any information from it. But the information cannot be extracted from it. It is a singularity for self-awareness. But just like the inside of black holes are singularities for electromagnetic radiation, it doesn't mean that the black holes will forever remain a mystery, because the information being sought cannot be retrieved from inside. There is no inside. For all the information that you could ever find inside is on the boundary of that black hole. smeared out all over it. I think this is somebody's one of the physical scientists. This is one of their theories, that the entire three-dimensional structure of the black hole is smeared on a two-dimensional surface. The same thing with death. The entire mystery of death is written on the edge of life, on the boundary between life and death. The mystery between the two states of awareness. It's pretty interesting because these are not, these sound so much like metaphysical concepts only, but they're not. They actually are part of everybody's everyday functioning. I mean, if you think this is, whatever, just try to go a few days without sleep. By the time you get to day 5, you'd probably be hallucinating or hearing things, or you'd see your self-awareness degrade. Now, you would know that it is degrading, and there's absolutely nothing you can do to stop it. If self-consciousness was a thing, this would not happen. So think about it this way. At the bottom of a swimming pool, a clean swimming pool, you see these patterns of refractive light dancing around. Now, the light is real. The water is real. It is the interplay between the light and the water, the shape of the water, especially the flat shape, the concave and the convex shape. And these are always changing. And so they're always playing with the light. So in some areas, they focus the light. In some other areas, they disperse the light. And this accounts for the pattern at the bottom of that swimming pool. Those places where the light becomes very focused, they're called caustics. Self-awareness, self-consciousness is a caustic. That's really what it is. When we are going to create truly not artificial intelligence, natural intelligence, like a human, we would need this idea to help it define a sense of I. It's a caustic. And that is why the brain uses 20% of all the glucose in the body. Because it is projecting an image. It is projecting a reality. The first part of the projection of that reality is the sense of I. Because it is upon that it builds everything else. And that is why in my last podcast, the astrology of self-awareness or self-consciousness, I talked about the organizing capability of the sun and how this organizing capability of the sun represents the number 6 of organized complexity. And that is why when you go to the Jewish mysticism of Kabbalah, you would see that the sun represents the 6th sephirah on the tree of life. That's just a hint. I've just, thrown a pontoon from one whatever to another. But if you want to explore that further, you go ahead. Because what I'm trying to say is that just like building a house, constructing a building or building a structure, self-consciousness is built too, like that. And the role of the organizing principle, which is the sun in this case, and since we have only one of it, is to orchestrate the nature of reality, especially the realizations that are able to be accepted. Because self-awareness is modified, updated, or downgraded by realizations, which go to restructure the seat of conviction. Now, these things sound like psychological concepts, but I always throw a pontoon.